Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar Elm, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Dr. Chris Pineda, organizational psychologist, transformational leadership expert, TEDx speaker, and founder of Groundwork Leadership. Chris, welcome to Founders Future.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Happy to be here and talk story.
I'm excited to dive in. I always like to start from the beginning. So take me back to before you started Groundwork Leadership. What were you doing beforehand? And then what was really the motivation behind starting the company?
Yeah, they're one and the same. They go hand in hand. I was working for a global training and consulting company called the Arbinger Institute at the time. And I met through one of our public workshops that we did every couple of months, actually every month. We had a couple of clients come through, two real estate individuals. And I saw what their organization, and I was doing a lot of sales at the time within the company. And I decided, hey, I'll go meet them at lunch. And they signed up on their own. So it's okay, I'll introduce myself and see kind of what their aim is and what they're hoping, if they want to use some of our services, so on. And they ended up, I don't want to take too long in that story, but they ended up becoming very close friends. In that first meeting, they actually said to me at lunch in a 2-day workshop on the first day. So this was just half of the day of day one. They said, "Hey, we want to come and we want to do this in our community." And I said, "Do what?" They said, "We want to introduce these ideas of change and transformation." And the Arbinger Institute, their content centered around outward mindset and helping organizations kind of shift culture through how people relate and see one another. And so they they resonated with this content, and they wanted to do this in their community. Didn't really know what they meant, but maintained a relationship with them. And eventually they flew me up there and we held a couple workshops, and I didn't know it at the time, but these individuals were philanthropists. They're real estate guys, but ultimately their passion was philanthropy. And so they gave a lot back to their community and so on and so forth. So we developed this relationship, and about a year later, they flew down and basically asked me to come and join their team on the philanthropic side to help, their words, transform their community. And we didn't know what that meant. So my education at the time, I was passionate about creating change. I didn't really know how to do it. Like, I knew the theory behind it. I didn't really know how to go out and enact it, especially at a community level. It's one thing within a team or an organization, but in a community, that's quite the ask. And so that's what they asked me. And I said, sure. What did I have to lose? And moved my family up to Oregon, is where we were, in Salem, Oregon. And these philanthropists are very behind the curtain. They don't like their name on things. They don't like getting credit for things, but they give significantly, millions and millions of dollars away a year. Their impact is felt all over beyond their checkbook. And so I was one of their first employees as fully focused on philanthropy. And I wasn't out giving away money. They were like, Chris, go and figure out how to create transformational change. And here's a bunch of, they didn't say these words, but the message was, we have the resources. So do what you need, figure it out. And for 3 years, we struggled trying to figure out how to do this, how to bring people together, how to create community change. It was rough, right? I called it guerrilla style. We were just deploying things here and there. I would go help an organization over here and sit in over here and help with conflict over here and do some training there. And it wasn't cohesive. It wasn't coming together. But during those 3 years, we were able to piece enough together to realize maybe there's a formula here. And we decided to formalize that into what is now Groundwork. At the time, it wasn't. We called it Leadership University. And the idea was to bring leaders from across sectors together: education, government, business, nonprofit, bring them together consistently, so regularly, and have great and deep content for them, help them build relationships, give them purpose together, unify them. And again, we didn't, at the time, no idea what we were actually doing. It was very much experimental. And we had millions of dollars over those years we were throwing into this to try to figure it out. From that, fast forward, from that groundwork emerged. We created a full-on curriculum that I truly believe is world class. We researched everything. They sent me back to school. I got the PhD. This became the heart of my dissertation. And we saw amazing things happen. Worked with hundreds of leaders and dozens of organizations trying to create transformational change. We saw impacts across the board in our community. And the biggest impact was honestly within these individuals and their relationships with one another. We can't control what they go out and do, but if we can create a space and environment for them to develop deep and trusting relationships, they now are the solution. And that was really the idea is we want to empower and catalyze transformation. We can't control it,
Mhm.
but can we catalyze it? And the research actually identified for us what we call 7 conditions of transformation. And that's really what Groundwork's work is about now is how do we get these conditions out to the world? And I think the message is unique, different than I would say most entrepreneurs in that this was born out of philanthropy. So I was never asked, hey, Chris, go and build and create this so that we can make money, so that we can have a bottom line, or so there's no strings attached. It was truly pure intent of we want to create transformational change. Here's the resources to go and figure that out. Go and do it. I frankly, I don't know if many people anywhere get that opportunity. And so we did that for nearly 10 years. The problem for us, though, that we faced as a business was when we decided to, we had built something that could live on its own, and we decided to try to venture and create our own business out of this. And we very cordially separated with the philanthropists, still close friends with them. During that time, we never thought about needing to make money. We never thought about marketing. We never thought about sales. And then we've had work in and out, and it's fine. But my responsibility that I feel is we really discovered something in little Salem, Oregon, that was making a significant difference. And I feel this sort of responsibility to get that out to the world. And we're trying to figure out the best way to do that. So that's the origins story.
Yeah.
It was never, hey, we want to start a business and make a bunch of money. It was, hey, we want to transform our community. And
Mm.
then we had really the blessing and privilege of having somebody write a check to do that for several years. And we poured, like I said, millions of dollars into figuring this out. And I can tell you
Wow.
now, we figured it out. And so now it's just how do
Yeah,
we share that, right?
sure. Yeah, I love that. I want to dive into how you're planning on marketing and what you're currently doing. But before I do that, I want to give the listeners more context. Let's start off with who would you say is ideal to participate in these type of retreats, programs, workshops, etc. And what outcomes are you really driving for the individuals that participate?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that's had to change for us. So when we first of course started separated from this philanthropist, our model was pretty clear. It was we work with other philanthropists or foundations, we partner with them. They have the resources, they have the not just the financial capital, but they have the human capital, they have relationships. And philanthropists are a unique breed, and so are foundations because they're one of the only sort of groups, we'll call it a sector in a community that don't have an ask, right? Like business, they need to make money. Faith community, they have their religious beliefs. Nonprofits, schools, governments, they have constituents, there's political things involved. So there's all these pressures and pulls. Foundations and philanthropists, especially private family foundations, they can really do whatever they want to do. And so they're in this unique position to have influence to convene people and bring them together. So our model was we partner with foundations, we partner with philanthropists, and we help them build and create a program like we created in Salem. And we did that. We had a large foundation in the Midwest that we had partnered with, and we were in the process of helping them build and create that. And due to a lot of things that were out of our control, we were unable to really fulfilling that contract. And it was largely on their part. And so that caused us to pivot really early last year of can we do this? Because again, foundations and philanthropists, they're not out looking for solutions. They can do what they want. So to get an audience with them is
Yeah.
very difficult. It's not easy to get an audience with people that have so much that they're giving it away, right? They're not looking for a competitive advantage. They're not trying to buy things from anybody. They literally are giving away what they're passionate about or what their founder had left in the legacy to give towards. And it's a lot of work to give away. The foundation we worked with in the Midwest, they grant away 30 to 40 million a year. That's a lot of work to do it responsibly. And so that's what they're focused on doing. And so it's just hard to get an audience with this group. And so our sort of model started to not work as well as we wanted it. And to answer your question, that was our first audience was let's partner with foundations and philanthropists. That's our primary customer. Secondary would have been on the ground now working with those leaders from across sectors. These are executive C-suite leaders from, these are elected officials, these are nonprofit leaders, these are business owners and leaders, faith community leaders, education leaders, superintendents, you name it. Those were our secondary customers. So that was the model. We had to pivot and we started to realize maybe the best way that we can get this out is working in the corporate and business space and working with leaders, leadership development specialists, helping them transform their organizations. Those same 7 conditions, they work in the community level, can overlay into the organizational context and still do the same thing. And I spent the last year actually being in healthcare as an executive leader, implementing all of these things and seeing that they work and they work even quicker because it's one organization and you have one cause and everybody's on the same payroll versus in a community where people come in with different opinions and it's a power struggle. But when you're in one organization, man, these 7 conditions, when applied, can make
Powerful.
transformation happen very quickly. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I love that. So I guess what do you feel like is the biggest challenge to raising more awareness and getting more people to know that this type of solution is out there?
Yeah, it is the awareness. It's messaging it right. It's being really specific on who it is that we're working with. Our runway honestly ran out. And so that's why I decided, hey, look, here's an opportunity. I had an opportunity to work in healthcare and come in and work it as an executive leader in a building. And I've worked in 2 different buildings since then as the administrator slash CEO. That's what I'm currently doing right now. And on the side with Groundwork, speaking. And so we have speaking engagements lined up. I'm working on a book that's about halfway done. And those 2 things are going to be critical. We had to let go of a lot of our staff at the time, unfortunately, again, because the financial runway ran out. And so it's been myself for a while, and I've just partnered with 2 other individuals that are really in it for the long haul. And so now we're in this sort of calibration brainstorm phase where everybody has they have their day jobs, right? And significant day jobs, by the way. It's not like we're doing meaningful work in our own worlds, but we're trying to recalibrate what direction are we really going to go? Are we going to head in with Groundwork? In the meantime, again, I've had contracts over the last couple of years working with some government agencies, with nonprofits, and done speaking engagements. And it's still moving, but it's truly a recalibration. As you can imagine, we first were really focused on philanthropists, and now we're shifting and realizing
Yeah.
actually these 7 conditions, while I love how they change and transform a community, maybe the best and most practical way to actually spread these ideas is through the corporate and business space.
Yeah, especially because you can charge higher ticket, meaning you can bring on employees, meaning you can invest back into the business and scale it even further, which will result in even a greater impact.
Yeah.
Can you give us a teaser of what the 7 conditions are?
Of course, yeah. And again, when we started back when I told you when we were kind of doing the guerrilla style, there's no way that I could have ever come up with this. Like this truly came from our research of trial and error, running these cohorts for years, experimenting, figuring out what worked, and then conducting research to gather what actually did work, what led to transformational change at an individual level for these leaders within their organizations and then ultimately within our community. So there's this three tiered qualifiers that we were looking at and gathering all of this data, most of it qualitative. And this is what we found. There's 7 of them. And the order is important as well. The first one is purpose, so having purpose. The second one is commitment, being committed. The third is a common language. So having a language to describe and talk about change and culture and transformation. The fourth, what am I on the fourth? Yeah, the fourth is vulnerability. That was actually the highest we'll call rated or discussed in the research was vulnerability. What am I on fifth? The fifth was consistency. And the sixth was deep trust and relationships. So deep and trusting relationships. And the last one was a safe space. And not safe space meaning a space where people can come together and fail forward, or they can truly feel like they don't have to get it right. And so there's a lot to say about each of those seven conditions, but that's a high level of them.
Yeah.
Purpose, commitment, common language, vulnerability, consistency, trust, and safe space. Now, individually, all of us can agree that those are very important things. But what we discovered was that in combination, created as conditions, which we did, we started creating process and systems around those things. In combination, working together, that's what started to create the transformational change. So that was the sort of discovery that we identified.
Yeah, I love that. I'm super curious. Have you ever thought about niching down? Because I've seen somebody do a very similar business model, but they don't articulate it the same way that you do, where they host these different retreats and workshops, but it's only geared towards men. And it's about becoming the strongest version of yourself, becoming the man that you can be for your family, for your loved ones, etc. And I think they charge 5 to 10K for that. And it's a couple days or like a week-long thing. I'm
Yeah.
curious if that's something that you've ever thought about.
Yeah. I mean, we've last spring, so a year ago, a little over a year ago, spring of 2024, we were really, while we had still some employees, we were trying to go deep in what way can we truly pivot. We explored a lot of different areas, and truly, I think we didn't have the right partners, we had the right people on the bus, to quote Jim Collins, for what we were trying to do within philanthropy. And then that runway came to an end and it didn't grow how we hoped it would. Again, failing forward. I don't see it as a failure. I just see it as learning. And so now we had individuals that were really tailored to help us grow in that way. And looking back, I don't think we had the right people to help us grow in this new era. But yeah, we did explore that. We thought, can we get really specific to work with individuals? We even had a conversation about working with just men. That's hard for me to go only in that direction because I've just seen the transformation that's happened with all types of people. And some of the most amazing leaders we worked with are not only men, they've been women. And
Yeah.
so I feel as though it was hard for us to really settle on that, on a specific sort of personality type. So we're trying to really focus in on what's the change that we want to create and what's the type of organization that we want to work with. And really where we're at now is we want to work with organizations that want transformational change. That is the conversation they're having right now. And there's organizations that are having those conversations. Like, how do we create transformational change at a cultural level? Like, we want to go through cultural change, a cultural rebrand, whatever you want to call it. And they're having a hard time finding the solution that's going to work. And most of these organizations are not going to be startups. They're going to be around for several years, a long enough time to start to see cultural problems. I think if you haven't been around for at least 5 years, you don't have enough experience at a cultural level to actually see how culture starts to get toxic and how people start to get toxic. And so you have to have been around for at least 5 to 7 years, I think, minimum. So that's the sort of length. They have to have money isn't necessarily their issue. They're growing financially. It's culture. And they're seeing that if our culture doesn't change, it's going to start to deteriorate every part of our business. So those are the sort of conversations that I think are happening, and those are the organizations that we want to work with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I can see why you wouldn't want to just obviously niche down to a specific gender, but maybe a specific type of organization, because you cast a wider net in a sense.
Yeah.
Now, I know I want to be mindful and respectful of your time. What is the best way for people to reach out to you to work with you?
Yeah, people can always message directly on LinkedIn, although as LinkedIn can become there's messages that come in all the time, and you never know if somebody's trying to sell you something or they want to truly talk. I don't know. So people can attempt that. Our website is probably the best, groundworkleadership.org. We have a contact piece there, and you can reach out directly to us. It'll go to our email that we'll see, and we can get in touch with people. But we also have social media channels as well, Instagram, TikTok. Been quiet lately because I've been really in the thick of some turnarounds in healthcare. So it's taken up a lot of my time. But those are all ways that people can reach us. And again, we're really focused now on speaking and creating a couple of really one offering that's entry into what we do. And it's inviting people like the sort of organizations I just mentioned that want to transform their culture to go through our course where we outline all those 7 conditions. And we're really focused on helping them bridge the gap between this is what we want to be as an organization culturally. This is what we say. This is our vision statement. These are our values, but it's not the lived experience of people in our organization. So many organizations struggle with that. The very organization I'm a part of right now in healthcare struggles with that. They have a great vision, great mission, vision statement, values, but people on the ground don't feel that. And that's a gap. And organizations that are struggling with that, we have a way to help bridge that gap. And that's who we want to work with. So that's what the workshop that we're offering will bring people through. And then we also want to help them create, I'll call them cultural artifacts or ways to memorialize culture. Because a big part of the story that I've talked about in Salem and this transformation, the answers at a personal level to me came at a cultural level. My daddy's from the Asia Pacific Islands, and things didn't start to change. And so I started to learn from some of these cultures that are part of my heritage, these 1,000-year-old cultures and simple things that they would do in their customs and their practices that have lasted today, like thousands of years. And I've learned from that culture is memorialized and remembered through those sort of things, through gestures, through art. I mean, in the Asia Pacific Islands, tattooing is a big part of it. It's lasted thousands of years. Simple gestures that they have in our organizations, we need to identify what those are, right? What are they, and how are we being intentional in artifacting those and memorializing those? If we have a really strong set of beliefs or values, if that's all they are is written in a handbook somewhere, they won't stick. We have to do something that really sets them to be strong and powerful. Those become the bridges in that gap that I discussed. So that's what we want to help people identify, is that they already have these things in in their organizations now. They have them. It's just, how are you going to memorialize those things? How are you going to extract the best from those things so that you can keep building for the future? So a lot of it isn't, here's these new ideas that are going to change everything for you. It's, here's some conditions that are helpful to create, but ultimately organizations have the answer right now. It's just a matter of, can they see it and discover it and then utilize it intentionally to help them transform their culture. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Any final words before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate your time. I'd say this, it's one of our slogans in Groundwork, and it's that transformation is caught, not taught. So it's the irony of our existence. We want to teach about transformation, but we really believe that you can't teach it. You have to catch it. And so we try to really do our best to create curriculum and ideas and spaces and tell stories that help people catch it, because you have to catch it. There's no other way around it. And once you do catch it, you know exactly what it is and what it feels like. I believe all of us want transformation in our own personal lives. I believe we want them in our organizations, and we certainly want them in our communities. And that's what we're all about. So I appreciate the conversation, and just being able to talk about it is always a joy for me. So thank you.
Awesome. Anytime. So that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go to groundworkleadership.org. And if you are a business owner, specifically a coach, consultant, or an agency owner, and you're really looking to scale your business and you want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to discover how we went from 0 to $30 million in 26 months. Until then, keep on climbing.